Live from London, it's Plank of the Week with Mike Graham.
Welcome. I'm not Mike Graham, you may have noticed. I'm Kevin O'Sullivan. He's still on holiday. So my guests this week are, of course, everybody's favourite copper, Peter Bleksley. I wish they were still like him, I'll tell you. Alice Grant, political commentator, the great Will Geddes, security expert, and, of course, showbiz supremo Rebecca Twomey. So let's get going. And first up, it's you, Peter. Who is your first nomination?
Good evening and welcome to the latest diversity, equality and inclusion training for Transport for London, brought to you by the Mayor of London. Just be nice to everybody. There it is. I've delivered the training, and do you know how much I should get for that?
I've got an idea.
£2.5 million quid, and I've just done it for free.
Exactly right.
I'll send him a cheque.
Good to see Sadiq come back. He's been gone too long. Yeah, I mean, for all the problems that this city has, that this city of London, and its transport problems in particular, he needs every penny he's got to deliver a good transport city for the capital system, for the capital city of this country. And guess what? He's going to waste £2.5 million on diversity.
What a complete load of nonsense when there are women of all ages being harassed, assaulted and worse on our transport system on a daily basis, time and time again. £2.5 million might go quite a long way towards getting extra patrols, for example. Who knows what could be done?
Knife crime as well, a massive issue. We need money injected into these communities to try to help young people to steer away from knife crime. He's doing nothing about that, and people are literally being stabbed all the time. Two
15-year-olds killed this week.
Exactly right.
One very near me, actually. There was a stabbing near where I live, and it was really shocking. It's just
but what he's doing, actually, while people are dying, literally dying on the streets he's supposed to be in charge of, he's polishing his halo and saying, look, I'm really into diversity. Do you know how many employees for the NHS are purely devoted to diversity, equality and inclusivity? It is 800 staff at the NHS.
What does they do?
At a cost of, I think it's £40 million a year. Meanwhile, we know about the Ministry of Defence, 62 full-time diversity officers at a cost of £3.4 million a year. In what way do these people help towards the defence of the nation? You're an expert on that.
I have absolutely no idea. And what I don't understand is who's justifying these positions and why does it require this many people? And to take your point, what is it actually achieving? That's what I don't understand. You've got these people talking about diversity. Well, I think Peter summed it up beautifully within his statement. And that's pretty much of a token gesture that I think it needs, doesn't it?
And I'll tell you what, it's not diversity of thought, which is actually what we really need to get our institutions.
Do you know when the DEI culture started? It was in the 1960s.
Really?
Now, it's not a bad idea in those days, because it was all about getting people of colour to get an even break. And by the way, I'm into diversity in this country if it means smashing the class system, if it means that people get an even break, even if their parents can't afford to send them to public schools. I'm all for that. But the point is, since the 60s, the principle is good. Good intentions. Make it fair. Make it an even playing field for everyone. Everybody gets an even chance in their careers, in their lives. However, it is now utterly and disastrously out of control. It dominates every business, every government, every politician is completely enthralled to this ludicrous philosophy that is now turned into a catastrophe.
The thing that I don't understand, and I don't think anybody does, I mean, I challenge anybody to contest this, is where this diversity insidiously creeps into giving people who haven't earned a position, haven't earned a place. And then, like you say, if you've got people from poorer backgrounds who don't have the money to go to university, but they have the qualifications, they've trained hard, they've worked hard to achieve their objectives, to get that role, then absolutely we should be behind them and giving them opportunities. But it's those that get a shoe-in who haven't earned that spot. I mean, I'll be coming on to that a little bit more with my own nomination. Peter, quick question. That $2 million, is that a year or is that inclusive?
2.5 million a year.
£2.5 million. because I will be submitting my invoice a bit later when I get home.
It should be considerably more than that, obviously. By the way, just before we move on, here's a blooper from our friend, Mr. Khan.
I'm only going upon what I've read in the media, so I've not seen the transcripts, but as far as I'm concerned, that sort of language isn't acceptable, and it certainly shouldn't be acceptable in a party like mine that is proud to be both anti-racist but also anti-Semitic.
You got that right, you little freak. Shut up. Shut up. God, he drives me nuts. The worst mayor. Actually, he's the worst human being who ever lived. Alice, you're next. Who is your first nomination?
My nomination is Labour's Culture Secretary, Lisa Nandy, for opening the door to trans athletes. And the issue with this and why it angers me so much is because it's so unjust, and the British people time and time again have made it so clear how much we are so vehemently against men, biological men, competing against young women for these prizes and these sporting achievements. And it's something that is only happening on the female side. The World Rugby Organization has said absolutely no to female athletes, quite rightly. So why is it that women's sports are in such danger? And I think this is really what's underlying this is a very dangerous misogyny and a wanting to humiliate women in our spaces and in our sports.
I tend to agree. And Lisa Nandy, I've got to ask you, Rebecca, this. Lisa Nandy, I think, is already letting women down. I know that the people from the Sex Matters organisation, Maya Forstater and Helen Joyce and all of that lot, that they are keeping an open mind and saying perhaps things will be all right under Labour, because it was beginning to get a bit better under the Tories. They were beginning to get slightly sensible about all this, and now it looks to me as if we've taken a big step backwards, because what Lisa Nandy, the Culture Secretary, the new Culture Secretary, is saying is that whether or not trans women can compete against women, biological males competing against biological females, is a matter for each sport. That's ridiculous. There should be a blanket rule. The Olympics, by the way, which is starting as we talk, will unfold in a haze of confusion. Some sports will have blokes competing against women, others won't. It's mad.
It's completely mad, but I think the problem here is with anything saying the word trans, everyone braces. Everyone's too scared to say what they really feel on a podium. Even I'm afraid.
What, the trans women are blokes in dresses?
That's not what I'm going to say. You're confident to say that, but I think when it comes to sport...
Hold my beer.
when it comes to sport, people seem to have this massive fear because there are different sports. They can't have a blanket rule, but why no one ever comes out and says, why don't we have sports for, trans women can compete against each other in rugby? Because you do it with boxing. You do boxing, don't you?
Trans Olympics.
Yeah, why not?
That's 6 people in it.
And 3 people watching.
I mean, the trans people, the trans community is 0.04% of the population.
Yeah, exactly.
The numbers are minuscule. So by all means have the trans games, but you could hold it in a phone box.
But the thing is, in sport, this is an area where the group is getting a lot of attention. Therefore, it's not just 4 athletes we're talking about. There may be, a sort of a smaller population, but this isn't a problem that's going to go away until somebody puts their neck on the line.
What I don't understand...
And J.K. Rowling stood up against this and made it clear against
and Sharon
Nandy,
Davies.
Very rightly. But otherwise, I totally agree. This is another way in which they're silencing women, because they're saying, if we dare speak out against the man in our changing room,
I also don't
we are bigoted. Absolutely not. It is our right to stand up.
And by the way, freedom of speech, I don't want to offend anyone, but if I want to call a trans woman a bloke in a dress, I'm allowed to. That's freedom of expression.
Exactly.
So suck it up.
But also, I'd like to jump in very quickly. What I don't understand, and I'd love someone to explain it to me, is there are controls about performance-enhancing drugs. And whether you be a male or a female athlete, you cannot compete in a particular sport or professional sport if you are taking certain drugs. How does that work and scan against someone who is a transvestite? And, they're trying to inveigle their way, as Alice was saying, and hijacking female sport.
And on that subject as well, if you think about male biology obviously having clear advantages over the female figure, I play netball. I don't think I can play netball against a 6'5".
Blokes don't play netball anyway, so that doesn't matter.
Imagine me against Will. I wouldn't stand a chance.
What kind of guys play netball?
What is even
I
the
do
point?
now.
Peter, let me ask you.
What would the point of be policing drugs if there are clear advantages anyway and disadvantages against the male and female physique?
In your zone, Law and Order, Lisa Nandy also says that men who identify as women should serve their sentences in women's prisons. We've already seen where that leads. That leads to male rapists going into female jails and raping the inmates. That's a good idea, isn't it?
My heroes, my mum, my sister, my wife, and many other females that I've had the great pleasure of having in my life. And they have all been pioneers one way or another, whether it be in the workplace, in charitable work, however they've done it, they've been pioneers. And of course, along with millions of other women, have gained equality, have taken huge strides to benefit the lives of women the world over. And it's all being chipped away at. Yeah. It's being eroded by a perverse ideology, and as you pointed out, a tiny, minuscule proportion of the population who have got far too much airtime.
Exactly.
Men in women's prisons, do me a favour.
It's absolutely ridiculous. And Lisa Nandy is already letting women down, if you ask me. It's sexist to call women people with cervixes. No, they're women, females. Yeah. Was it female adult humans? There you go. That's your definition. Anyway, just to prove that I am just a shadow of the brilliant person who usually presents this programme, here's Mike Graham talking to that very same Lisa Nandy.
I'm trying to get at the truth. So far, you've told me three different versions of it.
No, it's nonsense. All you're creating is heat rather than light.
Is that
and
right?
actually,
and what are
frankly,
you
at the moment,
creating
that's
exactly?
quite shameful. What we're doing today...
I think what you're doing is quite shameful as well, but I wouldn't say that to you because I have great respect for the parliamentarians behind me here who are supposed to be voted in to do the bidding of the people who voted you in. And you've got
You've just spent 5 minutes saying that we're not doing our jobs and we're letting the country
Well, you're not, are you?
He's always fighting with people on College Green. You send Mike to College Green, he gets very combative.
Scrappy.
You had to go at Ed Vasey as well, really, really aggressively. But well done, Mike. Good stuff. Put that woman in her place. She's a woman and you're a bloke. Just to clear that up. Right, Will, it's your turn.
Well, I think this is the only true nominee and potential winner for Plank of the Week. And this is the lovely former director of the US Secret Service, Kimberly Cheatle. The woman who would never be able to answer a question when she came to the congressional hearing. The woman who will take no accountability for her responsibility as the director of the one agency in the world that sets itself in its own legendary lunchtime as the best deliverers of executive protection and presidential head of state protection, who failed so dismally, so categorically dismally, that she couldn't even furnish, and much of the buck was being passed to the FBI for the investigation. But 10 days later in the congressional hearing, got her proverbial ripped from her from every single senator that was there.
Prioritised the safety of her short, fat female agents who weren't up to the job over the safety of the person they were supposed to be protecting.
Exactly.
Saying that roof was too steep. It wasn't steep, by the way. No. How ridiculous. Anyway, let's remind ourselves of Kimberly's ordeal at the hands of the congressional hearing into her hopelessness.
We have satellite images from the Butler Fairgrounds. Have you visited the site?
No, I have not.
9 days and you have not visited the site. You should have been there that night. Did you talk to, that evening, did you talk to the team, the heroes that surrounded the president? Did you call them that night?
They were still operational work.
So that's an answer is no. Did you call them the next day?
President. Yes, I spoke with them.
You called them the very next day, not the day of, or was it 72 hours after?
I don't know the timeline, but I spoke with them
because you're under oath.
Immediately following.
I think it was 72 hours after. You waited 3 days.
Well, that, ladies and gentlemen, is what you call a crock of shit. I mean, God almighty, she was a disaster. Now, a lot of people are giving her a hard time, saying, well, they hired her from Pepsi. She was head of security at Pepsi Cola. Before that, she did 27 years
in the Secret Service.
So she didn't learn much. And by the way, DEI, again, her big obsession was diversity. And she was hired essentially by she's not really a doctor, Jill Biden, who also, like most morons, is obsessed with diversity. And her big project was to make sure she got 30% of her agents to be female. Well, that's not equal, is it? What about 50%?
To be honest, I think Donald Trump would have been safer in the private sector, because if anybody turned up that he didn't like the look of, especially Secret Service Barbie, who we saw hiding behind him when the shots were ringing out, and then fumbling with her weapon. Obviously, no training, no muscle memory, no experience of knowing how to
no willpower when it comes to eating chips either. About that wide.
I think that's just being cruel.
Yes, it is.
But anyway,
she deserves it. Shouldn't be in the Secret Service.
Long and the short of it, what, in my estimation, Kimberly Cheatle should have done was she should have gone in there saying, I am going to tender my resignation because the buck ultimately stops with me. But before I do so, I want to review this thoroughly. I want to put everything right so that for my successor, they're inheriting the best Secret Service that I can leave behind me. Rather than, you know what, I'm going to get forced out, bullied out by every senator at that congressional hearing. She had no choice at the end of that.
She said, I take full responsibility, but wouldn't take full responsibility. Anyway, here's more from Kim at the congressional hearing.
It is a miracle President Trump wasn't killed. Corey Compagnore's life is over because that damn shooter made it on the roof. And it wasn't the roof that was dangerous, it was the nut job on top of the roof. You know what else is dangerous? I believe your horrifying ineptitude and your lack of skilled leadership is a disgrace. Your obfuscating today is shameful. And you should be fired immediately and go back to Garden Doritos. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
God,
the American.
Quick word from another expert on security. What did you make of that operation?
Well, of course, there is no such thing as 100% security. It's almost impossible to always guarantee somebody's safety at all times. But that shooting of Donald J. Trump was appalling. It was amateur hour.
Yeah, exactly. And in future, if you're guarding a 6'2" guy, don't get a bunch of women who are about 4'3" to do so. They're all gathering around his waist. No wonder he nearly got shot, and no wonder he was able to do that. All the agents came up to it. Ridiculous.
Good job there wasn't a second shooter.
No, of course not. Now, from the sublime to the ridiculous. Now, Rebecca Twomey, who is your first choice?
I thought you meant I was the ridiculous.
Well, if you like.
Nice to see you too, Kev. So my first nomination is marine scientists, who were looking at behaviour in sharks off the coast of Brazil. Now, they found cocaine in the shark systems. They're not great whites, but that would have been a great gag. It's sharp
great white powder.
It's sharp-nosed sharks. So they're not the hugest of the species, which I've been researching. I know a bit more about sharks now. But they found cocaine in their muscle tissue, in their system. Yeah. But the interesting thing here is...
Maybe in their nostrils there was...
and they were sniffing around.
And they named the shark Pablo.
They actually think they're the most interesting sharks in the world, by the way.
And they won't stop talking, though. That's the problem with them.
And they can be a bit aggressive.
Let's have a little look at some sharks. Let's have a little look at some sharks in action.
Well, everyone's replaceable.
The hunter becomes the hunted.
Oh, the humanity.
Sharknado 5, global swarming.
That's what happens when you give sharks cocaine.
No, I think it's unfair. Sharks have received so much bad propaganda in the media from Jaws. Do you remember Jaws? And everyone was... You know that actually killings of sharks for food rose after that film. I love sharks. They don't deserve this bad press.
The sharks. The issue here is obviously it's a serious environmental issue. But the reason
who's the plank here?
Yeah.
Is it the drug addict shark? Stop taking drugs. Just say no, sharks. On that bombshell, we're going to a break. Welcome back. The eagle-eyed among you will have still noticed I'm not Mike Graham, I'm the thin one. Now, we're going through the planks of the week and it's my turn, so listen to me, I'm the host, all right? And my first nominee, I guess it's Hugh Edwards, but it could be the BBC as well. But basically, it's this. So that guy, Hugh Edwards, formerly, the... Welsh windbag bore who used to be the state broadcaster's chief newsreader, auto cue reader. Such a tough job. No wonder they gave him nearly £500,000 a year. Anyway, that's exactly what he was earning, £475,000 for the past year, including, over the past year, a £40,000 pay rise. The bastard wasn't even at work. He was suspended in disgrace for forging inappropriate relationships with younger members of staff, something for which he latterly quit. But for the past 12 months, he earned £475,000 and was given a £40,000 pay rise. So we're also talking about, of course, the BBC Rich List, which has got all the usual suspects. There is Gary Lineker, 1.35 million. Yeah. I mean, why does Zoe Ball get nearly £1 million for spinning discs? You know, it's just ridiculous. You know, have a look at that list and you tell me which of those people are worth anything like that kind of money. You've got Greg James, who spins discs on the Radio 1 breakfast show, over £400,000. You know what the BBC says? Well, we have to pay these rates because, you know, if we don't, the commercial sector will hire them, will nick them from us. Rubbish!
No, they won't.
Rubbish! You think Gary Lineker could earn £1.35 million for going, that was a good goal, anywhere else but the BBC? Absolute nonsense. But paying a man who was suspended in disgrace for nearly £500,000 and giving him a £40,000 pay rise, that is a disgrace, that is a scandal, and for accepting it, Hugh Edwards, you are the plank of the century. There you go. There ends the lesson.
See you next week.
Moving on. Thank you. What do you all think?
It's atrocious because this is taxpayers' money.
Yes,
these are elderly people who are funding Gary Lineker's lifestyle. Gary Lineker, who is one of the most annoying woke voices, constantly belittling the UK, constantly railing against England, so unpatriotic, and yet we're funding his salary.
So, Pete, how many licence fee non-payers have you arrested in your career? How many grandmothers have you arrested for not paying their TV licence?
The nearest zero.
But it's a joke, isn't it? I mean, it's a joke. This is our money. We have to pay for this. That's the scandal of it. If it was a commercial company, none of our business. You can do what you like. But this is how they're misspending our money. I always characterise the BBC like this. They're like the old feudal barons of medieval times. They take all of our money, the peasants' money, and they divide it between themselves. It is the two-tier system.
The one thing I'm not going to
diversity, equality and inclusion officers as BBC.
About 10 bloody thousand, I'd imagine.
I think the one thing I'm not going to thank you for, Kevin, is by the mention of Hugh Edwards, that image has now come back into my consciousness. That horrible, frightening, nightmarish image that we all saw around that time.
The Majesty the Queen.
I think
so you're the showbiz expert. What do you make of all this?
Well, what's really
Rebecca?
interesting is there are allegations that Hugh Edwards gave in total £35,000 to a young gentleman for pictures. Now, that £35,000 must have come from his salary at the BBC, we assume. So that £40,000, that's what really makes me feel really...
So he used his pay rise wisely.
Yeah, reinvested.
Invested it in his future.
And would he ever consider paying that back to BBC or to charities or to mental health charities? We know that he's got, issues there. But that's what really upsets me is that Hugh Edwards is sort of...
I have issues with Hugh Edwards and his wife playing the mental health card as well. Because that story was extinguished in a nanosecond the moment his wife said, "I've got mental health problems." Oh, well, we can't do the story anymore.
It's probably because the diversity team told them that they had to.
Well, exactly. I mean, I'm probably being too cynical, but that's what I do, folks. That's why I'm here. Here's Melanie Sykes telling us all what it's really like to work at the BBC.
I've heard people in power at the BBC talk about the audience as the great unwashed. That's how much they respect you, which is zero. Turnout shit for people they don't give a about. And if they think they're making fantastic television, they're deluded and they're happy, but you're left feeling like you've been entertained. Are you kidding me?
Good old Melanie, absolutely right. Great unwashed. There's TV people. It's like the people at This Morning on ITV, admittedly, but they used to call their audience Tower Block Tracy's because they all live in council flats. Don't hate your audience. Really don't. Look up to your audience. Love your audience. I used to work on The Sun, and we were absolutely brainwashed into loving our readers. Don't look down. Don't look down on the people who pay your wages. And what is is wrong with people who watch the BBC? Good for them. What is wrong with people who watch This Morning?
You may have noticed that I've not commented on this story, and that is because I can exclusively break the news that I've been invited to take part on Strictly Come Dancing. So,
but you'll end up crying because you get bullied.
Oh, that'd be a laugh, wouldn't it?
Did you see that, by the way? So the Strictly Bullying saga, which I keep getting in trouble for because I keep laughing about it.
Yeah.
It's just a dance show. Who gives a damn? You know, shut up, man. You got 50 grand, so a dancer kicked you in the leg. Suck it up. Anyway, Steve Backshall, the tough explorer and adventurer, has come out of the woodwork to say, when I was on Strictly, I was bullied by Ola Jordan. Ola Jordan's 5'2".
Who? The female dancer?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. Everybody's been bullying.
Some people pay good money for that.
What about some of the other people? What about some of the other people on the list? Rebecca again. I mean, Nick Robinson, the boring Today interviewer, journalist. Yeah. I mean, 350 grand or something, really?
It's the thing with Strictly is that it's such a huge show and it's watched by 7 million people. People absolutely love it. And for celebrities, it's the biggest ticket into more money, into reinstating careers. So there's so much pressure on it. And what happens with all of these, it becomes a witch hunt. One person goes, we can't talk about someone else's experience. We don't know what they experience. Yeah. But one person will make a complaint, and then someone else will, and then someone else will. And there's a domino, and sometimes you're like, well, actually, I didn't like how I was spoken to 10 years ago in a rehearsal. But you've got to ask the question of, well, why didn't they act sooner?
I hate Strictly. I've always hated it. So I was a TV critic for 12 years. I had to watch it every week. I hate it. I spent stuck in voodoo pins into my voodoo Strictly doll, trying to, and finally, it's happening for me. I hope it goes out of business. You know,
not till I've been on it. You're going to watch it.
I'm voting for you. I'm voting for you.
You're going to watch it.
People say to me, why don't you like Strictly? I'm a bloke. Why would I like ballroom dancing? I like football and beer and stuff like that. Really?
That's a toxic masculinity, Kevin.
I'll tell you what, Peter.
You will change your mind, mate.
If you're on it, I'm tuning in.
I'm watching it for the first time ever, if Peter's on it.
God.
I love a bit of Strictly.
Peter Bleksley, you are next.
If you can't do the time, don't do the crime. But just Stop Oil can't do the time, can they? They've done nothing but moan and whinge. And Backshall, he was at it again, honestly, loads of them. I've never had such a laugh in a long time. It's been absolutely joyous. But there was a real standout person for me. The mother of Cressida, her name is Cathy Gethin. So her daughter Cressida got weighed off with 4 years last week. And Cathy Gethin thought it would be appropriate to grab a microphone and speak to the world about how outrageous it was that darling Cress, because she's banged up, will now miss her brother's wedding.
Well, let's watch.
Oh, the irony.
Shall we watch that magic moment?
Oh, yeah.
My daughter is Cressida Gethin. At the age of 22, she was the youngest defendant, and she has just been sentenced today to 4 years in prison. This means she will not be present at her brother's wedding next summer. She took action just after the laws on protest were heavily tightened, with the implications for protesters untested, from the expectation of action resulting in a fine, a tag, or a short period of detention. She now faces this, a multi-year sentence in prison.
Yeah, fuck off. Carry on, Peter.
Yeah, so I think, bearing in mind, let's think about all the people who missed hospital appointments, who missed funerals and birthdays, and missed getting to work, and many, many other things. And she doesn't get the irony of what she's saying because her banged-up daughter's now going to
little Cressida. They're all called sort of Pollyanna and Cressida and Antarctica.
Tofu.
Everything. One A at the end of their name.
I love that.
I mean, that's the thing about Just Stop Oil. They're all sort of upper middle class poshies.
Entitled. But also, what about the brides heading to the church who were probably stopped by Stop Oil?
You know, the irony is beyond compare. And of course, it still remains so funny that they got banged up. I fear, of course, they might appeal against the sentences. And if they get in front of some flaky appeal judge, they might have a bit shaved off. But we live in hope that they won't.
Yeah. Do you know what? But also, this is so good because it gives hope to the rest of the population who are thinking that these Just Stop Oil protesters are getting away time and time again with disrupting society and are not facing the consequences of the law.
And by the way,
thank goodness they're being actually finally put into jail.
Absolutely, but they killed people as well. There were people dying in the back of ambulances who couldn't get through their roadblocks. So, you know, it's not a minor crime. You know, those guys who climbed the Dartford crossing, they held up traffic for about 3 days. Now, what Cathy, Gethin and the gang are furious about is that this recent mob, 5 of them, including that old git Roger Hallam, the leader of Just Stop Oil, an absolutely farcical character. He got 5 years, the other four got 4 years. I mean, what they are not factoring in is that these people held up traffic for days on end. They stopped people getting to work. They stopped patients getting to hospitals. They stopped people going about their business. I've got nothing against the right to protest, but they don't have the right to ruin everybody else's life pursuing their little obsession.
No, they conspired to try and bring the nation to a standstill. And of course, if the police, particularly the Met, under the leadership of Sir Mark Rowley, hadn't appeased Just Stop Oil right in the very early days, it might not have escalated to what it's got to. But fortunately, in recent days, the Met are clearly getting a grips on this now, because they nicked a load of them at Heathrow before they could cause the disruption they were intent on doing.
Let's just hope the message gets through to the thickos at Just Stop Oil to not turn up.
Well, if it does,
this is the only way to deter them.
Well, look, if it doesn't, just build another prison and shovel them all into it.
Yeah, we're already at 99% capacity. That's a problem.
Do you know what that arsehole Roger Hallam said at his court case? He said that he was Britain's most renowned environmentalist alongside Sir David Attenborough.
Never heard of
and the judge says,
the delusion.
I think you might be overdoing it a bit there. And if you look at his track record, I'm environmentalist, I'm trying to save the planet, I really, really care. Have a look at his criminal. He's a career criminal. That's all he is. That's all he is. And in terms of these tough sentences, anyone remember Insulate Britain?
Oh, yeah.
So what happened when they started banging that lot up? Insulate Britain ceased to exist. Just Stop Oil, I suspect, will go the same way because middle-class people, as Cathy Gethin was pointing out, just don't like doing time.
I bet Roger Hallam's quite grateful for a bit of petroleum jelly now he's banged up.
I mean, they won't know what hits them when they get inside, will they? I mean, keep drinking the Kool-Aid, you Just Stop Oil wankers. Right, it is you next. Different style to this show. Alice, Alice, you're next.
My next nomination is very sadly the Royal Parks, and this is because on their blog they're now coming for the Royal Memorial in Kensington Gardens that Queen Victoria commissioned a year after her husband died in 1872 for Prince Albert. And it's so tragic because they're going on, blasting this memorial as something colonialist, when really this is such a beautiful memorial and it's part of our heritage. And yes, it celebrates Britain in the Victorian era. I think that's a wonderful thing. It's something deeply rooted in our history. And instead of actually, celebrating this, they had plans in the 80s to demolish it. Thankfully, it was saved. And now again, we're hearing this rhetoric against one of our beautiful monuments.
Yeah, I mean, Peter, this was
this
was built in 1872, and the Royal Parks want to inform everyone that looks at it that it's highly offensive because it reflects a Victorian view of the world. Let's see. I wonder why it reflects a Victorian view of the world. Could it be that Queen Victoria commissioned it? Could it be that it was built during the Victorian era? What kind of view of the world do you expect it to? The Plantagenet view of the world? The 21st century view of the world? These people are crazy.
Do you know it was originally built to actually be put on top of the Royal Albert Hall?
Was it?
Well,
Was it?
Yeah.
That would have been a sight.
That'd have been great,
Do you know what? I mean, I absolutely agree with you, Alice.
Yeah.
It's just, it should stay there. It's it's
Still
part of the
beautiful.
London skyline. But I've always thought it was hideous. But I didn't when I was when I was a kid. I loved it because I thought it looked like a spaceship, looked like Thunderbird 3.
It's so
now I think it's hideous, but that isn't. That isn't the point. That isn't the point.
Yeah.
What that at the corner, one of
each of the corners.
There's representation represents the continent. They're furious because there's a sort of Asian lady on an elephant.
Well, you know what? They're not going to like
all
ancient Rome very much,
exactly.
or the Parthenon, or any of the great
Yeah.
monuments of history.
But it's not. I mean,
frank.
I train in the park because it's my neighbourhood park, and I train in there all the time. And I have to say, I will be there to defend it if need be, alongside a bunch of people.
I'm not even joking.
And I've spoken to lots of people who are also in the park, and you see many tourists actually going along, because you've got Ganesh, you've got the representations of India on one of the corners.
Yes,
you get a lot of Indian tourists who come in to have photographs with their family with it. Yeah. They don't take offence by it, but this small pocket of idiots who just have nothing better to do with their time have decided to break cover and try and oppose and cancel something which they've got no right to.
Morons who find history offensive.
Yeah.
Morons.
They probably discussed it at a diversity, equality.
Yes, they did.
At the BBC.
Mind you, Albert's got something to answer for. He's the one that turned our royal family into a bunch of Germans. On that bombshell, it's time for a break. Welcome back once again. I have to point out I'm not Mike Graham. Why do I have to keep doing it? It's pretty bloody obvious, isn't it? Anyway, next up, it is Will Geddes. Who are you going for this time, Will?
So, this is an interesting one. It's the Bibi Stockholm and the Rwanda immigration plan. Now, I think it's very easy for everybody to slate the Conservatives for it, but actually, Labour had a part to play in that as well, in terms of the investments and the motivation to this highly flawed plan, which ultimately resulted in only 4 people actually being transported out to Rwanda at many millions. And the whole project, I think their loss was about £700 million. Now, don't even start me on track and trace, but on the Libby Stockholm, which is now, and Peter, you might agree with this one, that could be converted to a prison ship. There could be all sorts of things that where these
just stop oil.
Just stop oil and just stick them in there.
Stick it in an North Sea.
Yeah, but fundamentally, it's the flawed immigration plan or illegal immigrants being deported out. And the amount of money also, whereas you look at some of the other countries, I think there's better initiatives to actually just take people back to their original countries. It would have probably cost a heck of a lot less.
Yeah, I think the big elephant in the room here is the fact that we still belong to the ECHR and to the Council of Europe. So the court in Strasbourg is the one who has jurisdiction over UK law. This is a travesty of parliamentary sovereignty, because we ought to be able to deport criminals who come here illegally, but we can't because of Labour in 98, that Tony Blair signed us up for. The Human Rights Act, passed it through Parliament with no legal reservations, so we cannot have a say against a foreign court with foreign judges.
You're absolutely right. I mean, we should leave the ECHR, but we never ever will. And there's one thing I agree with you. I'm not sure who the planks should be here.
The government as a whole.
Yeah, both governments. Yeah.
Both.
The Tories made a hell of a mess of the entire endeavour. But I do sort of object to people who say, the Rwanda scheme did not work. How do you know? It didn't start.
Exactly.
You know, it's got to start now. So who wasted that money? First of all, Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary, she's a disaster as well.
Yeah.
She says suddenly, it's on record, the Labour House magazine, The Guardian, just before the election, said the Tory government has wasted £370 million on the Rwanda scheme. Somehow, Yvette Cooper has plucked a figure out and said it's 700. I'm not sure about that. But who's really wasting this money, Peter? Because the Labour Party Keir came in day one by scrapping the Rwanda scheme altogether. Yeah. He consigned all the money that had been invested to the scrap heap of history.
Yeah. It was 874 gazillion trillion billion.
Yeah, that's right. It's going up.
Because I checked.
Don't have a plan. They don't have an alternative plan to deal with illegal immigration.
No. Exactly.
So what is going to happen? These people are going to be given asylum. This is human trafficking industry which they're propping up, essentially. And it is absolutely shocking. And you know what? You don't think we're going to leave. I think that there is going to be a time where we are going to have to leave.
It is.
Well,
It
if
is.
you're paying people
no, it's not.
to have to go through
they're not being trafficked. They're customers. They pay 3,000 quid to come across.
Yes.
Well, they are being
that's not
trafficked.
trafficking. They're customers.
Depending on the definition.
An amnesty.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I think
Wouldn't
a lot of that
so
money.
Easy? Yeah. All of a sudden, the Home Office don't have a backlog. It's not a problem anymore because they just granted an amnesty.
I mean, to be honest, that money should have been far better spent in basically making our borders far stronger.
Absolutely.
Putting in countermeasures to obviously deal with the smugglers, disrupting and dismantling the smuggler rings. There are so many things they could have done. And including, obviously, the money that was given over to France, which is a complete waste of money. And I was running some ops at the end of last year on northern France.
Oh, that's a massive £500 million. I mean, I wonder...
that was 27 acres in Trinity.
But that's going in increments. So I think it's this year, it's supposed to be 260 million next
when we were over there, we saw the French authorities doing absolutely naffle, doing nothing. So the money should be returned. That money could be running flotillas, running interdictions on the boats. Yeah. Easily done.
This would have been good. Keir Starmer coming in and saying to Emmanuel Macron, you know that 500 billion that last lot, 500 million, £500 million that last lot said that we were going to give you. Well, swivel on that. You're not getting it. I mean, seriously. So, what actually is the plank here? Is it the Bibi Stockholm? Is it the Rwanda scheme?
I think it's the Rwanda scheme. I think fundamentally it's the Rwanda scheme and Bibi Stockholm. It was all put together. No one had thought it through. Everyone threw the money at it. And then, oops, it didn't work out.
No. Well, listen, here's Piers Morgan delivering his verdict on this entire issue.
I'll bet you £1,000 to a refugee charity you don't get anybody on those planes before the election. Will you take that bet?
Well, I want to get the people on the planes, right? Of course I want to get the people on the planes.
£1,000.
Right, I want to get the people on the planes. And you say you're scratching your head. Albania is an example of why it's working. We created a new returns agreement with Albania. Yeah. It meant that if people came here illegally, we could send them back, and you know what? They stopped coming. Rwanda will do the same thing for us.
I do not think it's going to work for you.
OK, well, we'll have to agree to disagree.
That's my grim prediction.
But you don't have an alternative way to solve that problem, then?
No, I'm not Prime Minister.
I vaguely remember that guy on the left. Anyone else?
Yeah.
Is he?
My grim prediction is, as the amnesty is announced, it will be a criminal offence for anybody who doesn't take in at least 3 illegal immigrants into their house, OK? It will be a criminal offence to refuse to do that, OK, which will all be part of the amnesty package.
And you'll have to use the Gary Lineker system where you advertise how wonderful you've been taking in these migrants, right?
Yeah, and if you come home one day and they've disappeared with your telly, it's tough luck.
I mean, we have to look at actual solutions, and leaving the convention is a solution. We repeal the Human Rights Act of 1989, and we leave. And, you know, if there needs to be a Bill of Rights instituted in this country again, we already have one from 1689, but should we need to have a Bill of Rights, then that can also be a discussion. But the point is, we deserve national security.
Yeah, we do. The one thing I'd say about the Rwanda scheme, you know, I know where you're coming from, but how do we know it didn't work? It never, ever started. So when the Labour said, it's a disaster, you just scrapped it. And who really wasted the money? 370 million down the drain because you got rid of it. A responsible government would have said, well, the last lot spent 370 million. Let's see what we can get out of this.
Exactly.
Instead, they scrapped the only deterrent that we had. And now what's happening? The Starmada invasion. 2,000 over the last week. It's just ridiculous. And what the Labour plan basically is all these illegals, we know how to solve this crisis. We're going to make them legal, which is a bit like saying we've got a real problem with murder. What are we going to do about it? Let's make it legal. You know, it's ridiculous. Ridiculous. Now, we're going to move on now. I think it is Rebecca's turn.
Yeah, a little bit lighter of a nomination.
I think we're going back somewhere, aren't we? Hang on a second. So we're going back to Strictly, but go on.
I think we might disagree respectfully, well, from my side anyway, Kev, on this, but my nomination is Strictly Come Dancing, which has dominated entertainment headlines for the last week. Hugely popular show. I know you're not their number one fan.
I respect a hit. I don't want it to go. I mean, I don't like it personally, but it's a very popular show.
I'll convert you.
Bleksley.
It's going to be great.
Yeah, I'll tell you what you can do if you go on that show, Foxtrot Oscar. And you were saying, Rebecca...
Well, there's quite a big scandal at the moment, if you're not aware of, for those not aware of the story, is that 2 dancers have been excluded from the show, and it looks like it's going to be 5 in total because of behaviour. Now, there's allegations, there's video footage of kicking, there's now something around, there's allegations of a sort of a sexual nature. We don't know who it was or the details yet. And there's an investigation at the BBC. But the problem is that why didn't they act sooner? Some of this footage has been filmed for a very long time. And you mentioned earlier the presenter Steve Backshall. In 2014, he was paired with Ola.
10 years ago.
He said on record he felt bullied, retracted it. Yeah, he said on record back then he felt
Woman
bullied.
this high. You're an explorer. You're an adventurer.
But you have to remember as well that, and this isn't against Steve himself, but celebrities operate in a particular demeanour.
Yeah.
They're very pampered, particularly people
Bunch
that
of tossers is what you're saying.
Whereas they are being paired with professional athletes. These are dancers who have undergone incredible training and compete.
Pampered tossers, right?
No, that's not what I'm saying, because this is...
That's what I'm saying.
But, essentially, strictly, also, what's coming out is that everyone has to sign effectively an NDA not to badmouth the show.
Right.
But now we're in the...
I've done that.
Have you done that, Peter?
This is so typical.
I've signed that. Yeah, I've signed that.
This is so
I said,
typical
if he goes
BBC
on the show, I'm
behaviour.
definitely tuning in. Anyway, here's the lady who basically got this rather wrecking ball rolling. It's Amanda Abingdon.
You can have all types of abuse, emotional, physical, mental, it's But it was not conducive to a happy environment.
And that was obvious to everyone.
I think, yeah. I mean, I would have people coming up to me saying, "I'm so sorry, are you okay? Can we do anything? Are you okay?" In the group chats, everyone saying, "I'm so sorry, Amanda. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry."
Listen, I've been a bit too facetious about this. You should take bullying of women particularly seriously.
I agree.
Steve Backshall can go and piss off, idiot. But the others, I agree.
What's interesting with Amanda Abingdon, though, is that I think it's really important in these situations. Obviously, this is my area of journalism, but to remember the facts in this. Now, what's come out is not debating Amanda's experience. It's not for any of us to comment on, but Giovanni de Fenice, her dance partner, who she's made these allegations against, he requested for rehearsals to be filmed because he was concerned at the start that she wasn't quite in the best position to undergo his style of training. Okay. So this is what I'm saying, is why then did someone not step in? We've got all these mental health awareness things. I'm sure the BBC have mental health first aiders and everything.
A whole army of them.
But they're clearly not doing their job, are they?
No.
Because if you've got someone who feels that she's had this experience, why didn't someone stop this immediately? And this is why you can laugh about the top level of just, a show having scandal. But actually, they should have acted.
You're right. It's a very good nomination that Strictly Come Dancing, the bosses, are definite contenders for Planks of the Week because they should have done something about it.
I am listening, Rebecca, but I've just got a series of stretching exercises that I have to do every day before I actually appear on the show.
I can already see you're a hell of a mover.
Oh, yeah.
It is time now. Before we have to endure more of Peter's gymnastics, we're going to go to a break. Welcome back. You know the drill. I'm not Mike Graham. Yeah, you got that on board already. It is my turn. I'm Kevin O'Sullivan, of course. I'm the host this week. I won't be next week. Mike will be back. You'll be relieved to hear. But my nomination, my second nomination, is, I don't even know how you say this. It's a very posh name. Charlotte Dujardin. Or is it Dujardin, if you say it in English? She is actually Britain's most decorated medal-winning Olympic horse rider in dressage, and she's been banned from this Olympics. Only in the last few days it has emerged a footage of her 4 years ago whipping the hell out of some poor horse. Everybody knows in dressage that this is what goes on. The way you get horses to obey you is you scare them, you frighten them, you beat them up, you control them. And so that's what happens in dressage. Dujardin, I think, is just one example of what goes on. And that sport, that's not a sport, It's not a sport. It's horses doing tricks. And somebody said, oh, well, you know, she treated that horse as if it was a circus elephant. Good analogy. You shouldn't whip circus elephants for that matter. But good analogy because it's just animals doing tricks. And what I say about Charlotte Dujardin, I'm not one to call for people to be hung, drawn and quartered and all that. But never mind stepping down from the Olympic Games. How about you get prosecuted for animal cruelty? Because if we're going to send a message that you can't treat animals like this, then people have to be punished. Don't you think, Peter?
I think so, yeah, without a doubt. We are supposedly a nation of animal lovers. Yeah. Look how many millions of dogs are owned and cats and all of that. We do, as a nation, love animals. And anybody who mistreats one deserves every sanction that's coming their way.
I've got to choose who this week's Plank of the Week is. Lisa, Nandy and Alice, well done. This is for you. And on that bombshell, thank you very much. Thank you to Rebecca Twomey, Will Geddes, Alice Grant and the great Peter Bleksley. Looking forward to seeing you on Strictly. And I've been Kevin O'Sullivan. You've been an amazing audience. It's Mike next week. Bye-bye.